Yes, sir. There's one in the room. Does your buddy have one as well? Place your hands behind your back for it. All right, under arrest.
Go find them. Go find my guns.
Just multiple guns?
I got a stick, an AR.
Cool. I've worked with it. Lieutenant Finn. Or the driver told me.
My son. Think I ain't spoke to my son. Think I ain't told my son, his mama, and his grandmamas. His ass going to prison. If you goddamn keep it up, his ass going.
The hip-hop world is shaken tonight after a dramatic scene unfolded in an Atlanta courtroom that may go down as one of the darkest moments in rap history. Legendary rapper T.I., known not only for his music, but also as a cultural figure, collapsed in court after hearing the judge hand down a 5-year prison sentence to his son, King Harris. The news spread like wildfire across social media, sparking heartbreak, anger, and endless debate about what really happened and whether this tragedy was preventable. But this is no ordinary courtroom story. It's not just about one arrest. It's about drugs, weapons, betrayal, unanswered questions, and the crumbling of a family dynasty that many believed was untouchable. What happened in that courtroom was the climax of a nightmare that began weeks earlier on a dark Atlanta highway. When flashing blue lights brought King Harris's world to a halt, it started like something out of a movie. King Harris, barely entering adulthood, was driving his sleek BMW through Atlanta late at night. To many, it looked like just another reckless moment from a young celebrity who had already built a reputation for bad decisions. A traffic stop routine, at first glance, would quickly spiral into something much bigger. As police sirens blared and the car came to a stop, King seemed calm. Too calm, some officers later noted in their reports. He looked like someone who already knew where this was going. But when officers began searching the vehicle, the calmness gave way to something shocking. Hidden under the seats were bags of cocaine, marijuana, dozens of illegal pills, and a loaded firearm. The officer's body cam footage captured everything. At one point, a policeman whispered to his partner, "This isn't personal use. This is bigger." That single statement turned the arrest into a national scandal. The news hit the internet within hours. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok exploded with hashtags like #KingHarrisArrest, #TisSon, and #DrugScandal. Fans couldn't believe the son of one of rap's most respected icons had been caught with what looked like the toolkit of a drug trafficker. Commentators dug into King's history, replaying clips of his past controversies, the Waffle House fight, speeding tickets, social media rants, and his frequent flaunting of firearms in music videos. Suddenly, every small mistake from his past was seen as a sign pointing toward this exact downfall. One clip that resurfaced hit the hardest. Back in 2022, T.I. warned the world about his son's behavior. Speaking on stage, he said, "If my son don't change, prison is gonna be his destiny." Back then, it sounded like tough love. Today, it feels like a prophecy that came true. But the story didn't end with the drugs and the gun. According to multiple witnesses, King wasn't alone in that BMW. Someone else was in the car, a passenger who managed to escape before police fully secured the scene. The identity of that person remains unknown. Law enforcement has refused to release details, and that silence has only fueled speculation. Was this mysterious figure the true mastermind? Was King being used as a fall guy to protect someone bigger? Or was it simply an oversight by officers caught up in the chaos of the arrest? Fans and bloggers quickly turned this mystery into a full-blown conspiracy. Some claimed police were covering up the truth. Others suspected powerful figures were involved, and King was paying the price. With no clear answers, theories spread faster than facts. Amid all the noise, one heartbreaking detail stood out. Just weeks before his arrest, King Harris had proudly announced on Instagram that he had become a father. Posting a picture of his newborn baby, he wrote, "Welcome, my son. Time to take over." For many fans, that moment had symbolized hope, a chance for King to turn his life around. to embrace responsibility, and to grow into adulthood. But instead of stepping into fatherhood, he stepped into a jail cell. The thought of a baby growing up without his father, while the world debates his legacy, has left millions in tears. One viral comment summed up the sorrow: "That baby doesn't deserve this." Weeks old, and already his dad is facing years behind bars. When the case finally reached court, the atmosphere was tense. Reporters, fans, and critics filled the room, waiting to see what would happen to the son of a hip-hop legend. King, stripped of his jewelry and designer clothes, appeared in a plain prison jumpsuit and handcuffs. Gone was the confident young man flaunting his lifestyle online. In his place stood someone broken, weighed down by the reality of his situation. Prosecutors wasted no time. They laid out the evidence piece by piece: cocaine packets, marijuana bags, illegal pills, and the firearm. They emphasized that this was not a matter of personal use, but suggested organized distribution, a clear attempt to prove King was involved in trafficking. King Harris isn't a victim, one prosecutor declared. He's not a misguided kid. He's a dealer who thought his last name would shield him. Today, justice will show him otherwise. Those words hit the courtroom like thunder. King's lawyers tried to push back. They argued that the drugs weren't his, that the firearm was legally registered, and that police had gaps in their body cam footage. They hinted at the mysterious passenger, suggesting that King was taking the fall for someone else. But as the prosecution replayed the footage, showing officers pulling bag after bag from the BMW, the defense's case grew weaker. The jury's faces told the story. Most looked unconvinced. Meanwhile, in the gallery, T.I. sat quietly, his face a mask of pain. Reporters whispered that he shook his head repeatedly as the footage rolled, each bag of drugs like another weight crushing him. His daughter sat beside him, holding his arm, tears streaming down her face. Finally, the moment came. The judge read the verdict and announced King Harris's sentence: 5 years in prison. The room went silent. Witnesses say time seemed to stop. Then came the sound of heartbreak. T.I., who had fought his way from the streets to stardom, who had survived his own battles with the law, collapsed in his chair. His daughter screamed, her voice echoing across the courtroom. It was more than just a legal decision. It was the collapse of a father's hope, the shattering of a family's pride, and the confirmation that even wealth, fame, and power cannot protect someone from the consequences of their choices. Headlines exploded across every media outlet. Hip-hop royalty crumbles. King Harris sentenced to 5 years. T.I. collapses in court as son receives prison term. From stage to scandal, a dynasty in ruins. Fans were divided. Some argued King deserved sympathy, that he was just a young man who lost his way. Others insisted he was a criminal who needed to face justice. But one thing was undeniable: the Harris family was shattered. This wasn't just another celebrity scandal. This was a national tragedy unfolding in real time. A father's warning had come true. A newborn baby had lost his father, and a family once seen as hip-hop royalty now faced the harshest spotlight of all. As the dust settles, questions remain. Who was the mysterious passenger? Why haven't police released more details? Was King really running a trafficking operation? Or was he caught in something bigger than himself? No matter the answers, one truth stands clear. The story of King Harris isn't just about crime. It's about choices, consequences, and the painful reminder that even the most powerful families are not immune to tragedy. For T.I., a man who built his career on resilience, this may be his hardest test yet. And for King, 5 years behind bars will decide whether this chapter ends in redemption or becomes the final fall of a once promising legacy. The media wasted no time digging deeper. Old videos suddenly reappeared, flooding timelines and news segments. In those clips, King could be seen waving guns during Instagram live streams, laughing recklessly while speeding through crowded city streets, and even threatening strangers online. Other videos showed him mocking police and authority figures, his words dripping with defiance. Now those same clips were being played side by side with his mugshot, creating a damning portrait of a young man spiraling toward destruction. At first, There was still a sense of innocence until proven guilty. But as these images spread, that idea faded quickly. The story shifted. People began to say this downfall was not surprising at all, it was inevitable. The court case became more than just a legal matter. It turned into a cultural moment, one that threatened not just King, but his entire family name. Then came the hardest blow. A leaked federal report suggested investigators were looking into whether King's arrest was tied to a bigger drug trafficking network that stretched across state borders. Suddenly, whispers turned into screaming headlines. Was King Harris just another young man making bad choices? Or was he part of something far more dangerous? If the rumors were true, it could drag the Harris family into the darkest scandal the hip-hop world had ever seen. The night before the verdict, the internet erupted with chaos. Fans divided into two camps. Some pleaded for mercy, insisting that King was still young, a father who deserved another chance to turn his life around. Others were unforgiving, demanding he face the full consequences, calling him a disgrace to his father's legacy. One comment stood out more than the rest. It read, "T.I. told us years ago this would happen. He begged his son to change. Now look, it's too late." The next day, the courtroom was overflowing. Reporters lined every seat. Fans filled the hallways, and legal experts whispered predictions. When the judge entered, the room grew silent. It felt as though everyone inside was holding a single breath. The gavel struck. The decision was made. King Harris was sentenced to 5 years in state prison. The reaction was instant and overwhelming. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Reporters scrambled to grab their phones. King lowered his head, his expression blank, as if his mind couldn't fully process what had just happened. But the most heartbreaking scene played out in the front row. Witnesses later said T.I. clutched his chest, his body trembling before collapsing into his chair. His daughter let out a piercing scream that echoed through the walls. Family members rushed to support him, crying uncontrollably, while King was quietly led away in chains. Cameras caught every second, and within minutes the footage was everywhere. Headlines exploded across every platform. T.I. collapses as son gets 5 years. Hip-hop dynasty destroyed by drugs and guns. King Harris sentenced father breaks down in court. What should have been a private, painful moment became one of the most public spectacles of the decade. Millions watched as T.I., once celebrated as the king of the South, sat in tears, powerless to stop the future being stripped from his son. The Harris family name, long tied to music, wealth, and cultural influence, now seemed bound to scandal, shame, and heartbreak. People everywhere began to ask, was this the end of a dynasty or the beginning of something even darker? Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was unbearable. The judge's words hung in the air like a curse. 5 years, not just 5 years for King, but 5 years that seemed to crush the entire family. Tiny, his mother, ran forward through her tears, trying desperately to comfort her husband. She clung to T.I. as if her arms alone could mend his broken heart. But how do you heal a father who has just watched his child condemned to a cage? In one final, haunting moment, King turned his head as he was escorted out. For a brief second, his eyes met his father's. Their gaze carried every emotion, pain, regret, and unspoken love. A son in shackles and a father powerless to help him. King tried to stand tall, but his lips trembled, his eyes red with tears. That single glance was enough to scar everyone in the room. The chaos didn't stop there. Outside the courthouse, fans screamed King's name, demanding mercy. Protesters clashed with police, holding signs that read "Justice for Harris" and "Free King." Reporters shoved microphones in every direction, desperate for raw reactions. Online, Twitter exploded with hashtags, #PrayForKing, #JusticeForHarris, #TipBreaksDown. In less than an hour, videos of T.I. collapsing had millions of views. People weren't just following a trial, they were watching the destruction of a family unfold in real time. Backstage, away from the cameras, Tiny collapsed into her mother's arms. Through sobs, she whispered, "We can't survive this. This will kill us." Her words shook with fear and despair. She wasn't crying only for her son, she was crying for her husband, for the family name, for the legacy that once felt unstoppable but now seemed buried under shame. Prosecutors, meanwhile, stood in the corner with quiet satisfaction. To them, this was more than a legal win. They hadn't just sentenced a young man, they had struck down an entire dynasty. Their victory felt like carving a permanent scar into hip-hop history. But the real pain stretched beyond those courtroom walls. Supporters outside fainted as news anchors reported T.I.'s collapse like it was breaking national news. Commentators debated live on television, was this true justice? Or another example of a system eager to punish young black men, especially those tied to hip-hop culture. One eyewitness compared the scene to a funeral with a person still alive. And in many ways, that's what it was. King being taken away within only a legal punishment, it felt like the burial of dreams, the burial of a father's hopes, and the burial of a family's strength. When the prison van pulled up, its cold steel door opened with a thud that silenced the crowd. King, chained and surrounded by officers, stepped inside. That sound of rattling metal was followed by his mother's scream, so raw, so piercing that security had to hold her back. Her cry wasn't just noise. It was the sound of a mother's soul being torn apart. T.I. could barely move. He sat on the courthouse steps with his head buried in his hands, his body shaking like the weight of the entire world had crashed down on him. Fans reached out, trying to comfort him. But how do you console a man who just watched the system swallow his son, the same system he had spent decades rapping about, warning others against, fighting against? This wasn't just another celebrity scandal. This was tragedy in its purest form. A father broken, a son shackled, a family shattered, and a legacy tainted. Cameras rolled. Hashtags trended. People debated, but for the Harris family, there was only silence, emptiness, and pain no headline could capture. Because behind every viral clip and trending topic was a truth so brutal it left scars on everyone who witnessed it. T.I.'s collapse wasn't just a shocking moment. It was history carved in heartbreak. And the world was left with one haunting question. How much more pain can one family endure? We watched a father fall, a son dragged away in chains, and a mother screaming as though her soul had been ripped out. This wasn't just news. It was a living nightmare, playing out in front of millions of eyes. King Harris isn't only serving 5 years, he's carrying a sentence that will shadow his family forever. T.I. isn't just a rapper anymore, he's a father broken in full view of the world. Tiny isn't just a mother, she's a woman left grieving while cameras capture every tear. This is bigger than a courtroom story. It's the collapse of a legacy, a tragedy so viral, so powerful, that the world couldn't look away. And yet, it feels like this is only the beginning. Every tear, every scream, every trending hashtag is leading to something darker, something bigger, something no one could have imagined. If you thought this moment was unbearable, if watching T.I. fall to the ground was more than you could handle, then you're not ready for what's coming. Because the Harris family saga is far from over.